Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the India Autism Center podcast, your space for meaningful conversations about all things neurodiversity. I'm your host, Sakhi Singhi, and today's episode is particularly inspiring because we're joined by Sumit Agarwal. Sumit has accomplished so much in his life that for that reason, I will have to look at the cue card and tell you all that he has done so far. So please bear with me because Sumit is the example of resilience and advocacy at its finest. He's a DEI advisor to Fortune 500 companies, a LinkedIn top voice, an SDG ambassador for diversity and inclusion, and a national keynote speaker. I'm not done. Sumit has been recognized by Forbes and Fortune. His story of overcoming the challenges of cerebral palsy and championing diversity is nothing short of remarkable. Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
being on this podcast today, Sumit.
My pleasure.
Do you have anything to tell us about just to kickstart this conversation?
No, I think I've done enough in life to make people look at cue cards. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
a little too much. Now, please, अब थोड़ा सा रोक दो जो भी कर रहे हो because this is a lot in itself. Sumit, I've known you and I've had the good fortune of knowing you for like a couple years, actually about half a decade now, and I've seen your work grow in advocacy, and I've seen just you change as a person in the last 5 years. I want to know what keeps inspiring you. Yeah, like what is this? Where is this coming from? Like, is boost the secret to your energy, or like how is this
I
happening?
have always been a Red Bull person.
Okay.
But all jokes aside, there has been this narrative driven across that if you are a person with a disability, you can't really take care of your parents, you don't have the money, you are a burden to the society, and you have to take care of yourself rather than taking care of your parents because you just can't earn enough to sustain a family. And from there, my journey has sort of started where, you know, you can't talk about neurodiversity without talking about parents and the caregivers. So, my dad is 82, my mother's 17, none of them earns. I'm the only earning member in the family. So, I was like, ठीक है, करना है तो करना पड़ेगा. You don't have a choice.
But that wasn't your motivation, right, Sumit? You've come from a privileged background, and you are privileged enough. But that wasn't your only motivation. I'm sure that your motivation is more than.
See, my motivation stems from people telling me that these are the sins of my past, from people telling me that, your mother should adopt another child, from people telling me that you are worthless and you will amount to nothing in life, from people telling me that you will never have friends in life, from people telling me that you will be depressed and you will sort of cut your wrist and you will die.
What the hell?
And were people who told my parents that he's better off dead because you won't have a burden in your family. So there are several reasons to my motivation, but I don't want to make people depressed. I've sort of done that without I wanting to do that. I think I've done that already, but
Yeah.
let's move on to the positive side.
Yeah. No, thank you. This actually explains how little people know about disability in general, right? Like their
Yes.
outlook towards disability is oh bichara and oh this, and you've changed that like you've changed that gigantically, like with the kind of even the podcast that you do, your keynotes that you do. What is it that can you now? I want to ask you like something sort of technical. What is cerebral palsy exactly for audiences that don't know it, and why do you think there's a misconception about people with cerebral palsy slash disabilities on the fact that they are not able to work or provide for themselves?
So, I will not get into the technical aspects, but just to explain very simply on what is cerebral palsy, it is something during your birth, if you are affected by environmental factors, then probably your nerves stop functioning or stop receiving oxygen. For my case, it was I was born premature in 7 months, right?
Okay,
A part of my brain did not receive oxygen, so it affected my nerves, and I got affected by cerebral palsy.
got it. And what is it that sort of you think is misleading, probably out there, that people think that people with cerebral palsy cannot earn for themselves
Yeah,
or
so couple of misconceptions. One is that people with cerebral palsy cannot have happy families, right? They live miserably. They live like a Three Idiots ka black and white scene. That is something which is not true. I know a lot of people with cerebral palsy who are married. I know a lot of people with cerebral palsy who are also divorced. But again, there are two sides to the coin, right?
Mhm.
I mean, at the end of the day, misconceptions are going to be there. Things like you cannot earn. But if you do not have the skills, you will not get a job. That is true for
everything.
everybody,
Yeah, that's true for
right?
everything. So I want to know, Sumit, because this is something that I see very often. I don't see a lot of visibility of people who are disabled. Like, when I go to a mall or I'm eating at a restaurant, I don't see a lot of disabled people. And of course, it's to say that disability doesn't have a face and all that. I mean, I of course, I get that. But I see you everywhere. You're everywhere. What is it that you have done to empower yourself to, that you can spread around that this message of your self-empowerment that you can actually give to folks?
I would rather not give false motivation or false hope. One of the most important things if you are a person with a disability is to have money. I'll tell you why, right? I know somebody called Asif, right? He is visually impaired and he doesn't have sight, right? And he is one of the associate directors at PwC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he needs to travel somewhere, he needs to have somebody to accompany him who is able to describe the surroundings. So if he is taking a person along with him, he needs to pay that person. For me, I have a driver, full-time driver. So if I need to go somewhere, I just cannot use public transport because in India,
It's out of the question.
public transport and the Squid Games are similar. You never know if
How
you
so?
survive or not, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's funny that you're saying that because we have a person in our team, and the other day he came to work, and we're going off topic here, but I was just gonna say it because it's really funny. He said, and he was looking very disgusted, and he was refusing to eat food. So I was like,
Yeah.
"What's up? Like, why aren't you eating?" He's like, "Nothing. I was in the metro today, and someone actually, like, for no reason, had a case of projectile vomiting where basically they just
Oh
puked on
my
themselves." And I was just like, I had nothing to tell him. I was like, okay, like, it's fine. Maybe you should not eat that khichdi today because I get why you don't want to eat it. But okay, now back to the topic of self-advocacy. Um, okay, money is one thing, resources is one thing. You need to have that for
People
you to
around.
get, you need to get that, like, to
That's
get
support
that,
system.
correct, that support system. So you think that a lot of people with disability do not have that support system, do not
They
have that
don't. They
parenting?
don't. I'll tell you why. If I look at data, right, I am also one of the board members for National Institute of Locomotor Disabilities, NILD, right?
Yeah,
I'm also on the board of
I see that. You're on the board of a
DEP.
lot of places.
I'm also on the board of DEPWD Services
I have
Committee
a
and
question for you. All of these flower bouquets that you get from all of these places, what do you do with it? Like, eventually, वो कहाँ
I give
जाता
it to my mom.
है? Okay, that's good.
So
Yeah,
yeah, uh, so yeah, back on the topic, the 70% of people with disabilities in India are from rural areas.
really.
रूरल एरियाज आपको सेरिब्रल पॉल्सी वो है ठीक है आपको झाड़ू मार के ठीक करेगा वो Yeah, they'll say आपको भूत पकड़ा है. That's why you are not able to walk.
That's crazy.
That's why you are not able to talk.
How recent is this data?
The validation of this data that 70% of people with disabilities are in villages in India is from 2024.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
And there, they will not
No, but
talk
Sumit,
about it.
I
They
think,
will keep you in their houses.
but I've heard differently. I've heard that people in maybe in rural places, they have that whole thing about inclusion. They live in joint families, so they're making sure that everyone works. That person is not any different.
Yes, but unless you have a disability. If you have a disability, you are a burden on the family.
No, and even if you have a disability, right? Let's say if someone has a disability in a rural family.
You have to understand the narratives of where it is coming from, the sins of the past birth. You must have done something bad to end up
True, but
like this.
after you reach that stage of okay, I'm done denying that this
Yeah,
you
then the stage comes, okay, this person is worthless. I need to make him sit at home and feed him. That's it.
it's interesting that you think that. I've always thought that people maybe in rural India
No, I
actually
have
have a
actually seen that, and I have been to many rural places across India. So,
you've seen this firsthand.
I have surveyed a lot of people as well.
Because we've had a few people actually come to this podcast and say that, maybe in rural India, this is the idea of inclusion just happens automatically. There is no concept of, oh, आप inclusion कैसे कराओगे? वो हो ही जाता है. मतलब you're grown in that family
Not really.
that it happens.
For them, maybe the inclusion is the family taking care of them. That's it. No giving your dignity to work by yourself. No making choices that you want to get married. No making choices that, okay, you have to take care of your family. It's the other way around. So maybe they regard that as inclusion somehow,
Maybe.
that, okay, I have to take care of him.
Maybe. Yeah, that could be it. But
There's also a similar concept in Japan, and where they regard that, okay, people with disabilities have to be taken care by the family because it's our moral duty and responsibility. So yeah, in the US, you have a disability, don't have a disability, you have to take care of yourself. Nobody cares.
that's true. And over here you said it is
Yeah, the
like,
family has to take care of you, no matter what.
but that is the truth. Like the family does have to take care of
Yeah.
you until you reach a point and then they stop infantilizing you and then you are your own person and
No,
you grow.
here the concept again is eternal child. If you have a disability, you have to be taken
That's
care
some
of your.
rubbish though. Eternal child is like some rubbish. Like
The
it's
concept is eternal child, but it's a medical term as well. That if you have a disability, you have to be taken care by your family for your entire life. Though it sounds good on paper, some people might say, okay, ठीक है, ख्याल रख रहा है तो बच्चा की बूढ़ा क्या है, and they are taking care of you. You should be grateful, but where's the dignity in
yeah,
that?
there's no
Maybe
dignity.
I think that way.
No, that's absolutely right. Like, how can you be a person when you don't have any autonomy over your mind and over your decisions? You're not
Huh.
a person. Like,
And if you're not earning the money, your mother, father, husband, wife, whoever's controlling the money is basically deciding if you want to have a chocolate, you get to buy it or not. Right? If the person gives you more money, then you are able to buy it. Otherwise, you are not able to do anything by yourself.
makes sense.
So, where's the dignity in that?
So, Sumit, the kind of conversations that you have, they're very like meaningful and full of depth. Okay. And I feel like that has happened because you have been exposed to a lot that I think a lot of people might not have. You were in a mainstream school, right?
Yes.
And were you given any specific provisions, or why were you in a mainstream? Like, how come, your parents decided to
So
know?
I got rejected from 30 schools, right?
Wow.
Before I got into a mainstream school. Well, and then my mother was a lawyer. She was like, enough is enough. I have to quit my career. I have to go on, knock on doors of schools. he will study in a mainstream school, otherwise he will not study. Because my mother did not like the word special, for good or bad. That was her thought, right? Um, some people do need special schools. Nothing against special schools, you know. Some people cannot study in mainstream schools.
And how was your experience in a mainstream school? Was it traumatic or was it actually fun?
It was isolated. I had no experience at all. I had zero friends, basically. So I made all the friends from a website called Orkut.
Oh,
So posting on people's scrapbooks. It sounds so ancient. I sound so old.
yeah, I wasn't an Orkut kid. I actually grew up with Hi-Fi. I don't remember if Hi-Fi was something was
MySpace was there.
MySpace was there, but then Hi-Fi came up, but I wasn't in Orkut. But yeah, no, that's interesting. But why do you think that is that you did not have friends in school? Because considering, people always say that how will children learn about empathy when you don't have, people from different backgrounds?
That was sometime in 1995. I don't think people were even talking about empathy back then.
Yeah,
When I was 3 years old or 4 years old, nobody was even talking about empathy. DEI was not trendy. Right? So,
right.
yeah.
So if people who've not had the experience that you have had, the exposure that you have had, how can they advocate for themselves?
I think with the advent of internet and with the advent of geo-free internet and data and all of the is I think people can find their own tribes on Facebook and LinkedIn and I don't know other social media platforms, Snapchat, Instagram, all of these Gen Alpha, Gen Z tools,
Right.
and they can actually find people with similar mentality, hang out with them, start small, start speaking in the localities, neighboring areas, maybe para events, quote unquote, right? So that kind of brings up the impact.
And what about what can parents do to make sure that their maybe child with a disability can feel more empowered and can actually be an advocate for
One of the
themselves?
best things the parents can do is basically after they've reached to a certain point where you have taken care of their schooling, where you have taken care of their college, after a certain point, the best thing the parents can do is do nothing, right?
That's amazing.
That's the best way to actually help people grow rather than cuddling them and
Yeah. Yeah.
Amar Baba, Amar Bacha, and all of these things.
True. There was a psychologist called Winnicott, and he spoke about something called good enough parenting, where you're not exceptionally great, you're not terrible either, but you're somewhere in the middle where you learn to say yes to a few things and you say no to a lot. Like you
Yeah,
know to draw a boundary with your child, to a
yeah.
point. And I think that's what you've said. You've said very well. My next question to you: we've spoken about parents, we've spoken about people with disabilities and how they can advocate. Where do you think educationists, teachers, clinicians, practitioners, how can they do a better job at being more sensitive? There's not enough literature around there. We keep blaming people for using terms and using jargons that they actually had no idea of. Like earlier when I started, I used to say high functioning, low functioning. Then later I found out, no, these words are like absolute no.
See,
अब ये कहाँ पे आता कहाँ है ये लिटरेचर कि मतलब जर्नल कहाँ पे है जहाँ मैं भी पढ़ सकूँ कि this is why you're not supposed to say it because this is the reason.
forget about literature and words and wordplay because
It's so refreshing to hear that.
enough is enough. High functioning, low functioning, उड़ रहा है, high flying, low flying, swimming. I don't care about all of these. It's because at the end of the day, what they deserve is respect, not wordplay. You call them Divyangjan, you call them
But
Divine,
but
you call them.
respect to comes from words, na, that you say.
Not really. Not really. I have a lot of people who have been joking with me, about disability. They crack disability jokes with me, right? And I am absolutely fine with that. You know, the moment you give too much respect and make people feel very special, then You are isolating and alienating them.
See, that's the thing.
No.
When you say, like, I was writing on LinkedIn and I was fairly active and I wrote something like, um, differently abled, because मेरे को लगा कि वो वैसे, meaning I'm giving respect only, right?
हाँ.
Then I think someone wrote about, no, don't say differently able, say disabled. Then on Instagram I think I wrote about disabled. Then they say, how can you say disabled, right? Differently abled. I'm like, एक कमेटी बना लो भाई जहाँ आप लोग सब डिसाइड कर लो कि कौन सा क्या है. But then I got really fed up with it, okay? And I said, to
I'll do
hell.
whatever I want.
Yeah, I'll do whatever I want. But then someone was telling me that, respect, I think the first
I'll
way.
tell you what. The
Yeah.
best way is to ask people, and would you want to be addressed as a person with a disability or as a differently able person? Or if they say, I don't care, to hell with it, then to hell with it.
Is that you? That you
Yeah.
don't care
I don't care.
to call you anything?
Call me whatever. Somebody called me a disabled person with a superpower. I said, okay, Superman. Okay, nice. Cool. Works.
Yeah, that's actually really, like I said, that's like a breath of fresh air, because Sumit, there are very few advocates, or at least I don't know many. There are very few advocates in itself in this field.
See, people are in India. People are ready to take offense at the slightest thing. Let them. That's their job. Let us do our job.
Have you ever gotten any slack from maybe someone else? You
I
have?
have got a lot of flack from a lot of people in the disability community.
Really?
That how can you call people with disabilities? Like, isn't that a very long word? I'm like, are you paying my bills?
Right.
No, not. Oh, they're like,
Too bad.
do I care about your opinions? Let me check my caring container.
Yeah.
Like, then I was like, oops, I'm out of cares.
Yeah, that's a
You
good
know?
one. I think we forgot to mention in your intro that that actually Sumit has a really strong meme game, guys. But back to the point, if you are really enjoying this podcast, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really goes a long way, and it really helps us promote more such conversations. So, Sumit, back to where we began. We spoke again about inclusion, we spoke about self-advocacy, we spoke about, not giving uh beep beep beep.
Yes.
But how would, if you had maybe 3 things that you could absolutely change in the system, what would those 3 be?
Definitely, I would change a lot of things, but
Only 3.
three things I already have in mind. One is the policies which are changing because of the PIL with the Rajiv Ratori case. I don't know
What
if
is
you are.
that?
And there has been a public interest litigation, and the Supreme Court has decreed that accessibility is actually a fundamental right, and even private employers, along with government employers, have to make their buildings accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So that has started, and then there's from the RPWD Act, there's the Right of People with Disabilities Act, which specifies that there should be equal employment opportunities for people with disabilities. I think I should, if I was given the chance, I would make it mandatory for every organization to have at least 2 people with disabilities working in the organization, so
So
that
you said one was accessibility everywhere, second was employability, and third.
employability. And third is, I would definitely get a reservation in the political circle that you must have somebody.
Do we have anyone with a disability right
No,
now?
we don't.
That's wow. Okay, that
We
is.
need to have a minister who is disabled,
Yeah.
who is a person with a disability. There was somebody called, I don't know, I don't remember, Jairam, or I don't remember exactly, but he was the only person with a disability ever to become a minister. But a lot of people suddenly become people with disabilities, and then they realize that okay, this is important. Manmohan Singh was on a wheelchair, Shashi Tharoor was on a wheelchair for a certain time, Bajpayee was on a wheelchair. So, when you have those people making decisions as a person with a disability, you will see a lot of changes.
So, about the second change that you want to bring, you actually help a lot in building inclusive cultures for organizations.
Yes, I
You
do.
know, my personal take on that would be that inclusive organizations are doing some sort of a tokenism. You know, there's this huge concept, not concept, there's a huge misconception that, you know, they say this, they do this DEI thing, but it's all just on paper, it's all to look fancy and bougie and this and that. What is, you've worked up close and personal with these people. What exactly is happening there?
There is a lot of tokenism, but I say that okay, at least start.
Hmm.
तुमको टोकनिज्म करना है, अवार्ड्स के लिए करना है, जिसके लिए करना है करो. At least start. And then when you see that okay, people with disabilities are able to perform, then you only come and say that okay, why not more people with disabilities? I have hired for tokenism, but then I got convinced that okay, it is a business case. But somebody has to convince la.
Yeah. So, what steps can companies take to, like you said, just start, but what steps can companies take to empower self-advocates and actually hire self-advocates?
Look, one of the best case studies in India, right, is Lemon Tree Hotels. The boss that time, the CEO, he just hired two people with disabilities just because out of CSR, right? And then they saw that
Is that still running though?
yes,
Yeah.
they right now 30% of their entire staff is people with disabilities across the world
Wow.
globally.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
They hired two people with disabilities
Just for the sake of it, and
just for
then
the sake of it. And then their managers came and reported that okay, they have low turnover, no absenteeism, they want to
yeah,
work harder than other people, and other people are also getting motivated. Okay, hey, let me also work more in the shift because they are still working.
correct,
I can't just get up and leave if somebody else is also working with me, right?
correct.
So, so now the 30% staff is people with disabilities globally. So that's why I said, okay, you don't have to have an elaborate grand design of the universe, right? You have to
True.
just
Start,
start
and it does
somewhere.
not have to be grand. It just
Yeah,
needs to
you
start.
don't have to have a policy in place, don't have to have a charter in place. Rakho and see that, okay, if they are able to deliver or not. If they are able to deliver, then ramp up the hiring slowly. And then when you have the numbers, then have policies, have accessibility and everything in place.
Makes sense. Do you have any closing thoughts for our audience, our viewers, our listeners?
See, again, people with disabilities are just people, right? I don't think you should give them any special treatment. Some people again say that should I go and help the person or not if that person is struggling for help? I think why don't you just
That's actually
ask
a
the
great
person?
question because, you know, sometimes I don't know if that person needs the door, like if that person needs me to hold the door or like someone needs me to hold their hand. I don't want to make it seem like, you know, I'm
Yeah,
again
I understand.
infantilizing them. So
So
how do you go about that?
I asked the person.
I think asking really is the first step to
Yeah,
it. We should just ask to make sure. But kitna पूछे यार? Like you, after a point, it's not like you need to have your own set of morals, na? This is right, this is wrong, this is everything. I can't ask. Can I ask? What do you want to be referred as? You know, do you need to be helped? Do you need?
yeah, like everybody is not coming up to you and asking for help, right?
Yeah,
So we barely meet, as you said, we barely meet people with disabilities.
that's
So
true.
when we do, we can ask.
That's true. That's true. And on that note, we will um, we will close this podcast. This was a great discussion,
Thank you.
Sumit. And to all the viewers out there, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please let us know in the comments below. We would love to know what we're doing right, and we'd also love to know what you'd like to hear more of. Sumit, as always, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. I feel like every time I'm talking to you, I need to like laugh like a lot, but I think somehow we managed to not do that in this podcast, which is a great, great achievement. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning into the India Autism Center podcast. This is our first podcast with Sumit and surely not the last. For more meaningful conversations, please stay tuned. And in the meantime, if you're looking out to watch another video, then consider popping one of the videos that's coming up on your screen. Until next time, guys.